and diet.
The old Dutch snack in the windmill pack. The taste just keeps you coming back. Crunch a snack made the old Dutch way. Find the flavor that you crave today. Try them all and you're sure to say it's the old Dutch snack in the windmill pack. The taste just keeps you coming back to the old Dutch snack in the windmill pack.
Eddie, this is Mrs. Butterworth. Hello, Eddie. I love your syrup. I make 2 syrups, regular and light. Mrs. Butterworth. And they're both delicious
Because they're thick and rich and buttery.
She really talks better than you.
Mrs. Butterworth's is twice as thick as maple syrup, so it pours slower. And it's made with grade A butter. Mrs. Butterworth's, regular and light.
WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
It's the day after the primary, and all the world loves a good loser.
Today, we will hear from 2 candidates who conceded with class.
I really do believe it's true. We've checked with all of our ballot box stuffers, and they can't keep up. I have heard from our Chicago contingent. All of the tombstones have voted, and it's still not enough.
Don't you understand that we're getting clobbered and you're supposed to be miserable, you beautiful people?
We'll go behind the scenes with the Latimer and Lindau campaigns and talk about post-election blues.
From WCCO Television, a new kind of news program, Newsday, with Marcia Fleur and Dave Nimmer.
Good afternoon, everyone. On this Newsday, September 10th, the ballots have been cast, the people have spoken. Today we look at the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
Especially the agony of defeat. We'll hear from 2 metropolitan mayors who lost their bids to become governors, and we'll do to them what we hate having done to us. We'll second-guess their campaigns.
Yes, and we're also going to talk to them about what it's like campaigning the final week when the polls show that there's nowhere to go but up.
And we'll talk about those opinion polls that we're so fond of running. We found a critic, a journalism professor who used to work for the Minneapolis Tribune, who doesn't like them, not one bit.
And this week's phenology report will show us yet another sign of fall. That is the annual migration of hawks.
But before we get to the hawk migration, let's check in on today's news headlines with Don Shelby. Don?
Good afternoon, Marcia and Dave. The 2 men who had their respective tickets, Rudy Perpich and Cal Ludeman, kicked off the political second season today by speaking out on yesterday's primary wins. At a news conference today, Governor Perpich said he viewed last night's victory as a vote of confidence for his administration. He said he welcomes Latimer supporters to his camp, and he said Cal Ludeman wants to turn back the hands of time. For his part, Cal Ludeman spent this day driving to Rochester and back on a brief campaign swing. The independent Republican candidate for governor said he expected to win, and he attacked the Perpich administration for being ineffective in its economic policies. One of the incumbents to lose yesterday's primary was State Treasurer Robert Mattson. He was defeated by DFL-endorsed candidate Mike McGrath. In other local news, a robbery spree in South Minneapolis ended with a high-speed chase early this morning. Police arrested a 20-year-old man they believe robbed 3 convenience stores at knife point within 2 hours this morning. Charges are being expected to be filed tomorrow. Pat Miles and I will have more of the day's news from these desks in a half an hour on the 5 p.m. report.
Thanks a lot, Don. Well, by midnight last night, the votes weren't all in, but the outcome was certainly clear. 2 men would continue in the governor's race, and 2 would not.
And the 2 who emerged, quote, winners gave thanks for what happened so far and spoke of what's ahead.
I look forward to working very closely with you for the next 8 weeks to make sure that we have a victory in November.
Ever since we started this campaign, I've never been alone, and that really works well. I want to thank you in advance for the hard work and dedication it's going to take, as you well know, to win in the big one. In the last and the big choice that we have to make in November, to make this state a better state, we have to win in November, and there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to do it.
Those were the two men who won, and you certainly will be hearing a lot more about their plans on our other newscasts today. But we want to offer something just a little bit different.
Well, and that something different is the perspective of two men who fell short in their quest to become their party's nominees for governor, and they are Mayor George Latimer on the far side from St. Paul and Mayor James Lindau from Bloomington. George, let me start with you. If I understand this right, you spent something over $1 million. You traveled by bus and small plane all over this state. You teed off half the Democratic Party, and you got your butt kicked in the polls. George, tell me again why this was so worthwhile.
Why do you feel so wonderful, George? Well, in truth, the number of people who pull together and help out is inspiring. Secondly, getting out to know rural Minnesota much better is very inspiring. Thirdly, to run against an incumbent, get nearly 250,000 votes. The final results are in now. It's 280,000 to 220,000, which is exactly a 12-point margin. It hasn't divided the party. It's left me, I think, stronger and understanding the state better. And I hope, just hope, maybe a little, Dave, that I contributed a little bit to the public dialogue of important issues.
All right, let me turn now to Mayor Lindau. Now, I'm not going to ask you this question. I'm going to tell you the answer, and we can argue it later. But I think the mega mall was a mega albatross hanging around your neck. However, if it goes, you're going to look like a bloody genius. Are you going to plan to use that as a campaign issue down the road? In other words, an "I told you so"?
Well, I don't think I'll use it as a campaign issue. I may be graceless enough to say "I told you so" at some point. It may have been an albatross. I suspect that it was, but it also was the thing that contributed most to my name recognition. So you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
77 to 44.
Terrible.
How do you feel?
Well, I am sitting up taking nourishment. I feel just fine. It wasn't as if that was a big surprise. You know, we too can read and assess the polls, so we knew what was coming. In a sense, it's a bit of a release to have that over. But like George, I think there was a necessary dialogue that we engaged in, particularly in the Republican Party, that's becoming a little bit too tight. And I tried to open that up. Certainly the votes didn't show that, but I think the discussions from this point on will.
All right, George, there's been a lot of talk, a bit of bitterness in the party, and now we have to turn in this postmortem to, is the healing process possible? We'd like to show you a bit of tape, and we don't mean to surprise you with it, and we don't mean to hurt Governor Perpich with it, but we'd like to have you react to an interview that was done between Pat Kessler and Governor Perpich a little bit earlier, if you'll watch with us.
It was a disappointment, you know, that he ran, because, you know, he sat in this office more times than any mayor, more times than the mayor of my own hometown, more times than any mayor of any city. He sat in my house more times than the mayor of any city. And it was always, what can I do to help St. Paul? And I was disappointed when he ran.
There you are. He was disappointed. Where is unity possible?
Oh, there's no problem at all, really. There is no anger out there toward Rudy Perpich, no hostility out there toward George Latimer. That's not what we found during the campaign trail, very frankly. Rudy was responding in a very human, a very natural way. But whether or not he and I are friendly or I eat at the mansion, I'll eat somewhere. That really isn't the issue. We don't have to be buddies to recognize the fact that important public policy changes have to occur over the next few years. I hope to make my contribution. I believe that Cal Ludeman represents the wrong direction for the state of Minnesota and that the administration of Rudy Perpich ought to be reelected. I'll be helping to do that. Everyone knows that. I've always been consistent about it. There isn't any great bitterness. As a matter of fact, may I just add, and I don't want to monopolize this too much.
Of course not.
As a matter of fact, everyone predicted that it would be divisive. My own theory is that the endorsement process is more divisive than the electoral one. I feel better and more whole rather than divided as a result of that effort.
Jim, I got a hunch that you don't think Cal Ludeman is right for the state of Minnesota, and you're a Republican, and that's got to be a problem. Tell me I'm wrong about that.
Well, I've not been shy about saying that, but like George, I do believe that division was clearer at the convention. The primary process, if anything, did help heal that. The kinds of things that I said about Cal in the pre-primary discussion will be said in spades by the Democrats afterwards. The difference is that prior to the primary, it was Cal Ludeman's record. After that, it's going to be the Republican record. So he's had some practice in running against that record. I think that'll serve him well.
Will you be on the road for Cal Ludeman?
Well,
your bag?
I've got lots of things to do in Bloomington before I get on the road for anybody else.
Okay, right. George, how'd you feel last night? You called it the CCO dynasty. We called it at 9 o'clock, and you kept attacking our computer. How did you feel last night when the poll came in?
Oh, I felt very badly. I was crushed. It was early. I wanted the fun of counting the votes, you know. And I felt that we would do better than the poll said, and of course we did. But that's not really worth arguing about. What's 7 points among friends? You said 19 and it was 12. It's only 50 or 100,000 votes, folks.
And the next time we try to make an appointment with George Latimer to talk about a story, we wait in line.
Did those polls really put an end to your campaign? That one in the Star and Tribune?
I think the first one in the Star and Tribune, it may not have ended it, but it so completely chilled fundraising that it effectively ended it, yes.
We'd like to thank both of you for being on board. You were very classy gentlemen last night. Your careers are wonderful. You're the mayors of two very fine cities, and that we will not forget. You didn't drop out of power. You simply went back home.
And I learned something again. I always knew the sun comes up the next day, doesn't it?
Oh, does it ever? Well, coming up, are the political polls fair to the candidates, even to the public, especially to the public?
We'll discuss the issue, and we'll also give you a glimpse of election coverage from the eyes of journalists.
Budget Power, the home improvement expert, makes remodeling excitingly affordable during the Builderama sale. Make every inch of space count with door file vinyl-coated steel ventilated shelving and keep items organized. Save on Easy Paint or one-coater brushes, rollers, and pads. The finest quality paint applicators made. One-coat coverage is guaranteed. Bring the outdoors in with easy-to-install Wasco skylights. Clear insulated glass lets maximum daylight in. Mid-Continent's kitchen cabinets are distinctive in design with many radiant tones to add charm. Shop the Builderama sale at Budget Power.
Today's small cars are tougher than ever on oil. Their high-compression engines not only rev high, they can run hotter than regular small car engines. Their searing heat can begin to break down an oil immediately. That's why there's Castrol, the only leading motor oil that in every grade provides maximum protection against viscosity and thermal breakdown. So use Castrol before your engine does something to get you heated up. Castrol, engineered for today's smaller cars.
Often when things are hard to find, you need a little help. And that's exactly what the Silver Pages is for. This baby can shed light on all kinds of discounts and special offers for people 60 and older. Real discounts you can get with your Silver Savers Passport card. So before you shell out money for anything, check your Silver Pages first. Because if you don't, all those discounts will be a lot harder to find. Hi-ho, Silver.
The optical department at Sears has cut the price in half. Every stylish eyeglass frame from our entire regular stock, now half price when you buy prescription lenses.
That's not all. Right now, you can get soft contact lenses at the fantastic low price of only $39. Imagine soft contact lenses for only $39. So hurry in
to the optical department at Sears.
There's more for your life
at the optical department.
at Sears.
Check any newsroom. Anybody will tell you covering an election is a little bit like playing a 33 record at 45.
Well, it's no exception here at WCCO. On election night, our staff swells in number much the same way a resort town's population peaks on the 4th of July weekend. While always calm on the air, here's the inside story last night that you as viewers didn't see.
The man with the information for us tonight is Alan Cox, who has been handling the results of our North Star election poll. How does this whole poll thing really work?
Oh, Will, it's a sample of...
Is he clear now till after the break? Okay, so I can get him off the set for a minute now, right? Okay.
Part of the St. Paul mayor.
All right, we're going to return right now to Marcia Fleur, who is standing by at Latimer headquarters.
I lost audio.
For Nancy and Section audio, we have two line shots boxed together, and that's the bathroom. Okay.
Tell me when. It's my monitor.
Ask him if we're going to my tape piece before we go to the...
Are we going to go to Alan's tape? He wants to know. Well, that setup piece, right? We don't really need that at this point, do we?
How long, Marcia, will we be on, do you think? 2 minutes?
About 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but...
Just numbers.
Just give her raw numbers.
Okay.
He's not getting in the way of science, and I guess I won't either. So let's find out from him.
Oh, no!
Well, there's nothing like the thrill for me of watching professionals at work.
Yeah, behind this. None of that made the air. None of it. Okay, you never saw it.
Well, our North Star poll added a new wrinkle to our election
Well,
coverage
talk
last
about
night.
mistakes. It's my turn to talk. At 9, 1 hour after the polls closed, we predicted the winners in the governor's race. Our telephone exit poll showed that Perpich was ahead of Latimer 57 to 38, not far from the actual figures of 55-38. In the IR race, we predicted Ludeman over Lindau 69 to 14 with actual returns of 77 to 14. The North Star poll, this is it. Compiled by WCCO, TV and radio, and the St. Paul Pioneer Press and Dispatch. Well, it took on added importance last night because a technical malfunction prevented the Associated Press from moving any election returns until today.
Poll has been a controversial tool for news media. Today we invited McAllister journalism professor, and I believe he's head of the department. I can call you that, can't I? Ron Ross. And Ron was a reporter and an editorial writer for the Minneapolis Tribune for 22 years, so he ought to have a viewpoint.
I'm very impressed. Tell me, why isn't the public served by polls?
I think the first thing we've got to make sure is that we define what we're talking about. Public opinion polls as they're used by the press, because there are many other uses of polls,
Sure.
the candidates and so on. But I think in the general terms, in the broader picture, to start with, they're not news. To begin with, they're not news, and they shouldn't be treated as news. They're, in effect, a manufactured story. They belong, like other media events, in other parts of the paper. In fact, the place to put public opinion polls would be on the entertainment page, more suitably. Furthermore, they trivialize our politics. They reduce the issues to simple statements that could go either way. They reinforce the trend in our politics toward horse races between leading candidates. And in the broad sense also, they distort the political picture. Politics in our political life is much, much more complicated than the public opinion polls would suggest. They remind me, I think, more than anything else, of our obsession with numbers. It's what you might call politics by body count.
But whole journalism schools are built on the tools of precision journalism. They keep saying to us, use the tools that a social scientist would use. And isn't that exactly what journalists are doing, Ronald?
I think the claims for public opinion polls to be scientific are totally spurious. They're about as scientific as this conversation we're having here.
Why are they right then?
Why are they right?
I mean, we can argue with George Latimer all night about a few points between friends, but they have a tendency to be pretty much right on.
Right in what sense?
In other words, they do tend to reflect and sometimes predict the outcome.
Predict winners and losers.
Yes and no, but what is their value in the larger picture in terms of voters trying to make up their minds on the issues and the values the candidates represent?
You think there's a psychological thing there?
I think there's psychological. I think they influence voters, but to stay just within the narrow confines of the polls themselves, to start with, I think they grossly underrepresent large segments of our population. The blacks, Native Americans, Hispanics, the elderly, and the poor in general are underrepresented in most polls.
Would you say that about the poll at the place you worked for so long, the esteemed Minnesota poll?
Yeah, I felt the same way about that. And as you know as well as I do, Dave, a few years ago, the Minnesota poll put its foot in a hole and stumbled, and it was many, many years before it recovered.
Well, the paper had to apologize.
Indeed.
Now, you did cover Vietnam, am
Yes,
I not right?
yeah.
It occurred to me earlier that part of what may have helped push congressional opinion over the edge to end that war were public opinion polls. Perhaps that war would still be going on.
Oh, I don't think so. I think the reason the public turned against the war had very little to do with public opinion polls. I think public opinion polls tend to underrate and underestimate the intelligence of the average reader and viewer.
Right.
I think most Americans have made their minds up irrespective of the polls.
We'll accept that as the final word.
Coming up, Mike Fairborn with a lot of explaining to do.
Like how long till we get Indian summer? His phonology will give us a chance to look upward for the signs of autumn.
Budget Power, the home improvement expert, makes remodeling excitingly affordable during the Builderama sale. Norco energy-efficient windows complement the natural warmth of wood, and all tightly built Norco wood windows are on sale. Save on elegant redwood and insulated flush garage doors from Ideal with heavy-duty hardware and locks. The night comes alive with the warm glow of low-voltage accent lighting. Versatile systems from Lunalite by Toro. Save on Maxbond from H.B. Fuller, a high-quality multi-purpose adhesive for indoor or outdoor projects. Shop the Builderama sale at Budget Power.
For years, Southern chickens have been trucked into Minnesota. Now, Golden Plump, the only chicken grown in Minnesota, declares war, presenting the Golden Plump Chicken Corps, an elite flock dedicated to stopping the invasion of Southern chickens and to ensuring that every store offers you Golden Plump chickens, the freshest chicken money can buy. So go ahead, Minnesota, eat well tonight. Golden Plump chickens are guarding your table.
Fall is shaping up at the mall with the most new fashions that go to work for you. Knollwood Mall, the best fashion selection that works for you.
I take my little brother to Arby's a lot. Maybe it's 'cause he likes that great roast beef piled high in Arby's roast beef sandwich. Maybe it's 'cause I really go for the taste of tangy peppers, Swiss cheese, the Philly beef and Swiss. Maybe it's 'cause Arby's supports big brothers and big sisters. Or maybe it's 'cause, well, I just like the guy. Get more information on Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Minnesota at any Arby's restaurant or call.
It's so gloomy outside, it's a perfect day to talk about changes in the weather, and it is Wednesday.
And that, of course, brings us to Mike Fairborn and the phenomenon known as phonology. And today it comes, my heavens, Fairborn, you're sitting on a bale of hay.
I am. That's one of the
Congratulations.
one of the key signs of the changing fall season, of course, is the hay that is being harvested. I would imagine that the weather the last couple of days that has kind of slowed down that a little bit, but farmers in some parts of southern Minnesota are, believe it or not, harvesting their third crop of alfalfa hay. So while they're busy doing that, other farmers are also busy chopping some of their field corn, doing some of the outside work that needs to be done. I think that has been slowed down by the weather as well. Birds are on the move. One of the most spectacular migrations is near Duluth, believe this or not, at a place known as Hawk Ridge. It's one of the major global sites for observation of the fall hawk migration. And on a mid-September day with clear skies and a northwest wind, you can see up to 20,000 hawks. A number of other birds have also been on the move. Most of the hummingbirds are going to be out of the state by the end of this week, and northern or Baltimore orioles left the Twin Cities area last weekend for their wintering sites in Central America. Now, we're looking, those of you that are looking for some fall color, that's what we want to tell you about next. You can go up to the Grand Marais or the Lutzen area, also in Hibbing in the Eveleth area, and between Alexandria and Brainerd. Now, I guess those of you that want to find it can up there. That's one of the changing conditions that are taking place outside right now. And as far as the weather that's taking place outside right now, we have a severe thunderstorm watch that's in effect until 10 p.m. tonight. That means that we can expect some pretty good thunderstorms, most of them south of us right now, but some heavy rain, strong gusty winds, maybe some small hail. Not going to drop off much overnight, probably about 58 degrees for an overnight low. We probably won't see much clearing until sometime late tomorrow night. So a stormy night ahead of us.
Michael, I want to thank you a lot. And Marcia, I'd like to ask you a question. Is there anywhere on live television you draw the line?
Yeah, it's sitting on a bale of hay.
Have some straw.
I'm sitting on a bale of hay that nobody could pay me enough to do that.
Obviously, he disagrees.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, return with us now to those trilling, speaking of birds, days of yesteryear that were Newsdays past. On this Newsday in 1980, staff members of the Minneapolis Star and Tribune began a month-long strike. Members of the Newspaper Guild supplemented their strike benefits by selling Gindin T-shirts.
And on this Newsday 5 years ago, another labor dispute was in the news. Solidarity, Poland's independent labor federation, issued an open challenge to the communist government by calling for free parliamentary elections.
On this Newsday 1983, WCCO TV moved to new quarters on Nicollet Mall. The staff, I hear, was ecstatic about the spacious newsroom, and management has been on our backs ever since to try to keep it spotless.
Well, we'll wrap up our Newsday in just a moment. We're queuing up those viewer calls to see how you rated yesterday's show.
Clean up your desk.
Get that bale of hay out of here.
Get your motor running. Head out on the highway. And looking for adventure.
Burgers are boring.
And whatever comes our way.
So's being like everybody else.
Born to be wild.
Taco, Taco Light, Taco Bell Grande. Anything but boring.
Born to be wild.
From Taco Bell. Now get a regular taco and a large Pepsi for only 99 cents at Taco Bell.
Surprise! So, isn't this great? I got my own kitchen, my own bedroom.
And your very own ring around the collar.
Ring around the collar.
For a tough stain like this, you need whisk.
But
Sprays and powders aren't good enough. Whisk does a better job. And when whisk gets out ring around the collar,
Your whole wash is clean.
no more surprise visits.
And no more ring around the collar.
Whisk gets ring around the collar and your whole wash clean.
Twix puts the dig in your gig. It puts the boom into your beat.
Puts the rhythm in your feet.
Keeps you rocking along. Puts the soul into your song. You can keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on moving with Twix. Chocolate caramel satisfaction. Light crispy cookie gets you back in the action.
Nothing 2 sticks of Twix can't fix.
Foot slip, smack, back in your rap. Keep on, keep on, keep on moving with Twix.
Come to Slumberland right now. You're not going to believe your eyes. You're going to see 4-piece sleep sets in any size, twin, full, or queen, at one incredibly low price of just $297 for the whole works. That includes carpet roller bed frame, Sealy box spring, and mattress, and solid brass headboard by Drescher. Buy all this anywhere else, you'd pay as much as $717. So don't do that. Come to Slumberland right now and pay just $297 for a 4-piece sleep set. Once again, that's quite a good buy.
Whenever you call our front desk to register a complaint, it's marked down on one of these. This is a viewer comment sheet. And last night's sheet is filled with 200 calls asking the question, what happened to the movie Moscow on the Hudson?
And the answer is that the movie was coming to us from CBS in New York, but we preempted it here because of our election coverage. Now, we could not reschedule the election, of course, and we certainly can't run 2 things at once. So we want to tell you that the movie has been taped and will be broadcast Saturday night at 11:05 p.m. That is Saturday at 11:05, unless there is an emergency election. And a reminder, if you have comments about this program, Newsday, call our viewer line at 330-2404. That is 330-2404.
Now, as far as the phone calls about our Newsday program, we received a lot of comment from people who think Councilmember Walter Dietzick is wrong in his efforts to crack down on illegal gambling involving those video poker games. This call is typical.
What Mr. Dietzick is trying to do is to legislate morality and take away our freedoms. Chocolate chip cookies are bad, too, when eaten in excess. Should we outlaw them?
We also received some comments from voters upset at our interviews with people who did not decide to cast a ballot in yesterday's primary.
I was embarrassed for our country in their response. Maybe it's because both my parents are Holocaust survivors that I've taken my role as an American citizen very seriously. And it's just too bad that so many don't.
And we also received several calls about a report on the handicapped wood carver. We let the carver himself, Bill Buckley, tell his story. It was a touching piece that several people took the time to comment on, including Bill's wife, Sharon.
Hi, this is Sharon Buckley. I just watched the clip about Bill, and I just want to compliment you. You did such a nice job of putting the whole story together. We really appreciate that those of you who worked on it are truly artists yourselves. Thank you.
Several callers noted that it was a very well-produced report, that our story about the duck carver was photographed well. And, well, here's what one caller had to say.
Good evening. Dan Rather, CBS News, New York.
I'd like, about the duck carving piece, I'd like to find out the photographer, Brad Early, if he's available to come work for us and his salary demands. Thank you.
Nice try, Brad. That was the guy who photographed the story, Brad Early.
And now to the 5 p.m. report with Pat and Don.
Among the items we'll be following on today's 5 p.m. report, what's next for the candidates who came out on top in yesterday's primary elections?
We'll also tell you about a string of armed robberies that kept the Minneapolis Police Department busy overnight.
And we'll look at some new trends in the rising health care costs. Those and other stories coming up on today's 5 p.m. report.